Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this this video or audio as you would say a radio broadcast or something like that. Excuse me. It seems that globalization is an impregnable, unstoppable force that's sweeping all before it. It cannot be stopped. It can be maybe minimally slowed down, but it's a done deal, folks. So you might as well just lean back and take it up the rear. But is that in fact so? Let's just have a look at situations that we thought were again, impregnable realities that couldn't be stopped, couldn't be changed, couldn't be removed, and yet suddenly they're gone, or in a short space of time. So let's look at a few of those. I'm certainly one who hopes that the seeds for the destruction of the globalization project are already well planted and are germinating as we speak, but I could be wrong. But let's have a look. Now, I'm old enough to remember some of the big events, and being an avid history buff, having going back to even in modern history, situations that seemed to be cast in concrete, and then suddenly they were nothing more than dust, sort of blowing in the hinterland. Now, I remember in this time I was doing a lot of international business traveling, still quite a young man, really, and the talk was that the American empire was on the decline, and that communism, particularly the Soviet Union version of communism, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, that would outlast America or the United States, and that it would still be an alternative method of not only political organization, but social organization, social structure, and so on, and that really there was so much to be said for it, that it had many benefits that the American system did not, and therefore it was likely to survive well beyond the United States capitalist system. Such was the view in 1988. And I remember reading these articles in various magazines and so on. One of the benefits of doing a lot of international traveling is you get a lot of time sort of stuck in a seat, and particularly if you're traveling business class and things like that, or if you get one of those regular traveler type status things, you have access to a very substantial library of business magazines. And this was the same among my employers. They subscribed to a lot of business magazines, and you could always take them home if you wanted and read them. So anyway, having access to all these business magazines, all these points of view, the things that I wouldn't normally have bothered with, and this was some of the conjecture that I recall. And I wasn't sure about it. I'd never been to the USSR at that time, so or for that matter, the East European communist countries and the like. So I couldn't really give you a first-hand view, but from my understanding, I thought it rather unlikely that a system that creates jobs that aren't needed, just to create an artificial fantasy world of full employment, surely that can't survive. When the profit motive and customer service and things like that are driving the other side of the equation. So, the capitalist side. So I remember having my doubts about all this surmising, but such as it was, and there were open sort of discussions about what will the Soviet Union look like in 100 years' time and 200 years' time. So the idea that communism was about to collapse or was going to be subject to imminent collapse was nowhere to be seen. You could find a few pieces, but it was mainly by the arch sort of conservative capitalist type commentators, where they would say that, well, it's unsustainable and they can't. The Soviets can't afford the money that they have, or the cost of the armed forces and all that sort of things that they maintain, the cost of the war in Afghanistan, which the Soviets were involved in at the time, and so on. So when you look at all that, there was every reason to believe that communism would be around for 100 years. Yet in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, the entire wider Soviet communist system had collapsed. It was gone. All the East European countries, Germany had reunited, East Germany with the West German states, and on it went. And so it was an astonishing thing that I think caught everyone by surprise, just how quickly it happened and how completely it happened. And this was something that I couldn't believe. And again, I was probably as much as anybody plugged into the international commentariat on these sorts of issues. So again, communism was seen, or the Soviet brand of communism, East Europe, was seen as something that would last forever, for all eternity, or that was the type of discussions that were going on. And yet, at the time I was reading those articles, within 18 months to 2 years, it was all gone. And so this unstoppable, impregnable, there forever, there for all time, cast in concrete, cast in stone, was all gone within that short space of time. And it was quite clear that very few people in the communist countries, whether it be in the Soviet Union or in the East European Soviet satellites, very few of them ever believed the nonsense that they were being told through the 100% controlled state media, and really, I suppose a quarter of the people went along. So those that were the least ambitious, the least diligent, the real sort of dyed-in-the-wool passengers, or ideological fanatics, I guess, they still thought it wasn't too bad, because you can turn up for work, get paid, you get your food, you get everything, and all you do is you turn up to the workplace each day. It doesn't mean you do any work. Doesn't mean you have to do any work. And you have ridiculous situations like there are 10 cleaners in the factory floor, but there's only one broom. That's that sort of thing. so that in reality, only one person can work at any one time. So you're standing around an awful lot. Now, if you're concerned about boredom and, I don't know, mental stimulation or something, you may have an issue there. But outside of that, if you were an ideological fanatic or just a lazy, good-for-nothing passenger, then communism probably did suit you. It was just everyone else it didn't suit. But anyway, the whole thing came crashing down with incredible speed. Now, for the wrong reasons, and you think it would come crashing down because everybody disagreed with it and so on, but there's usually a catalyst. In the case of the Soviet Union, there was the president, or what they call the person. The title was the General Secretary. That's the name of that's the position title, if you will, of the equivalent of the president of the Soviet Union. And he wanted to modernize the Soviet Union. He wanted to modernize agriculture so that the Soviet Union would be self-sufficient in food production, which they could have been if they hadn't been such chronic mismanagement. And he wanted to achieve d'entente with the West, to sort of tone things down a bit with all the fucking nuclear missiles and shit. So reduce the cost there and put those resources into more productive pursuits in terms of quality of life and standard of living. Now, to do that, he had to loosen up the economy and loosen the controls that the ideologues in the party had, the power they had, the position they had, the arbitrary powers of veto all over the place that the party hacks, the goons, the ideological fanatics at the very apex, the elites had. And he needed to reduce the power they had in order to create a freer economy that would be a more productive economy. So he was trying to do that. And the elites decided, no, we don't want this. We want to hang on to our power. We want all of it. And they were living very nicely. They had the beautiful apartments. They had the Western luxury goods shops. They had the caviar and the top of the range, vodka, and they had the international trips. They had the nice vacation. They had all that sort of stuff. Very small elite. But the peasants didn't. And so they weren't prepared to give up their power, even a tiny little bit of it. So they decided to effectively topple this guy, this general secretary. But that then set in train a series of events that led to, and very quickly, a series of events that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union and thus the East European Soviet satellites and so on. And again, happening very quickly. Now, another example of this could be, say, in 1810 in Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte. The French are in control of pretty much the whole of Europe, and there's really none who are able to oppose them. If any outfit does jump up to oppose them, they're facing one of the world's greatest ever military geniuses in Napoleon Bonaparte, and which is a huge part of the French dominance of the continent at the time. And so, but Napoleon starts to overreach. He's convinced that he can defeat the British if only he can stop European countries trading with the British. So if the British can't sell their manufactured goods into Europe, Napoleon theorizes, then they don't have the financial resources to threaten France, and they'll have to sue for peace. So again, Napoleon theorizes. So he opens up 2 extra military fronts. He goes into Spain, which ultimately burns over 400,000 French troops, or commits and burns 400,000 French troops. And then he sends the Grand Armée into Russia, assuming that a couple of decent military victories on the field, and the Russians will sue for peace, as indeed they have in the past. So he figures that's the go there. So all he's got to do is win a couple of battles on the Russian frontier, and then it's all good to go. Little does he realise he's going to march the army to Moscow, and then still the Russians won't surrender. Then he's got to march back again, taking quite heavy losses along the way. This then creates a scenario for his own defeat. Now, he then comes back, and Waterloo, that a lot of people heard about, which Napoleon loses by a whisker, incidentally. It was a very close run thing, Waterloo, and it could very easily, if one of his other generals had been a little more on the ball, one could have stopped the Prussians from arriving, or even delayed them by a few hours getting to Waterloo. Then Napoleon would have overwhelmed the British forces at Waterloo, and then could have turned on the Prussian. No, I think ultimately he would have been overcome at that point. There were too many other armies on the way. But let's not underestimate again, he's a military genius. It's quite possibly could have pulled off some further victories. But it seemed at 1810, it seemed France was absolutely impregnable, in control of Europe. There was none who could match Napoleon in terms of military genius. And yet there was the overreach, the overstretch in Spain and Russia, and that brought him undone quite quickly. So it took from less than 3 years from the high point of when he seemed to be master of all of Europe. It took a couple of years for Napoleon to suddenly be defeated and removed from power. So this is again, these things can happen quite quickly. Yet it was inconceivable beforehand. The British and various other European commentators believed that at the time thought that, well, really, until Napoleon dies, France is going to be the absolute supreme power in Europe, and nothing that can stop it. So that's how quickly things can turn around. Another example would be, say, the British Empire in 1897. So not much more than 100 years ago, the British displayed their battle fleet at a port called Spithead, and people from around the world came to look in awe at the British battleship technology and various technology in onboard cannons and long range guns, this sort of thing, and there was a real wow factor about it, that the British were rather in a state of self-congratulation over that they had the most advanced, most formidable battle fleet in the world, and very much a subliminal message here: hey, don't fuck with us, that, and that such was the power of Britain at the time, and it was enough for a British squadron of battleships simply to cruise off the coast of some place that wasn't towing the line for the message to be very, very keenly made, Do you want us to get tough here or what? That type of thing. So now, just a few years later, in 1901, there was the Queen Victoria's, I think 60 years on the throne it was. And so there was the British Empire. Now, pretty much every country in the world in 1901 came to London, England, to pay homage to this great empire, this incredibly successful, powerful, rich empire. Again, this is 120 years ago. And it seemed that the British Empire would last forever, rich, powerful, formidable, respected, foreign leaders coming, the great and the good coming to Britain to kneel before the great Queen Empress and this sort of thing. And yet, mere decades later, Britain was a shadow, a tiny shadow of the greatness that it once had. And it passed within 1.5 generations. It went from at the apex of world power and so on to being just a middle-rate power, and it happened incredibly quickly. And so this is now is globalization in this category. It may very well be. It seems it's sweeping all before it. It seems that every college kid talks globalist talking points. It seems every college professor is a propagandist. It seems every newsreader and news outlet is a globalist propagandist. It seems that every government is owned, controlled, run, and told what to do by the globalists. It seems that mass migration is just reaching a point of beyond fever pitch. The Green New Deal, standard of living is just shot to pieces. Cost of living is out of control all across the white West, and on and on and on it goes. And it seems globalists are in the ascendant everywhere. You can't look sideways without seeing an army of globalists. But is it so? Is it really so? If you look at, say, the move wherever free and fair elections are still permitted by the globalists, which is in itself an issue, we're seeing a move to the right. Now, I've been disappointed. Some Georgia Maloney, who talked big and tough about stopping illegal migration, so I think she's actually achieved nothing. In terms of stopping mass migration, she's achieved nothing. In terms of solving cost of living issues in Italy, she's achieved nothing. So all the big tough talk in the election campaign's been a pretty dismal failure since then, certainly in my view. If we look at, say, Donald Trump's first term and the efforts the deep state went to frustrate and hamper everything he tried to do, and how almost the first day that after they rigged the 2020 election, was the first day that the Democrats or the globalists, took power again. They reversed, by executive order, no less, they reversed many of Trump's policies. We need to put that in perspective. Even though Trump was elected and we all had high hopes, the deep state quite successfully frustrated him and again hampered his policies and then reversed them as soon as they could. The same goes for Brexit in England. The Brexit thing is really, in pretty much every imaginable way, has been reversed. And the public in Britain have been severely punished for daring to vote for Brexit by just mass migration from outside of the EU. So it's nothing was really achieved by Brexit. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the government of Javier Milei in Argentina. Argentina is not a huge economy in the world scheme of things. Population of, I don't know, 40 odd million. So it's no matter what he does or doesn't do, I don't think it's going to be a big deal in the overall scheme of things. Nonetheless, if he is as non-globalist as he purports to be, then I think that'll be significant, in as much as it'll give us an idea to how much the globalists will try and stop him, or what they'll do to stop him and take him out or prevent him from implementing his policies. Or if he's able to overcome the deep state, the public service in Argentina and the international banking cartels and so on, if he is able to overcome them and defeat them and get rid of the globalists out of Argentina, then we've got a nice blueprint to consider and to follow. The same goes with the election to the biggest party in the Netherlands, Holland. the Freedom Party of Geert Wilders, and he's hopefully going to become prime minister, and he's talking about stopping mass migration altogether, and then exiting, or possibly exiting the European Union and not accepting the green emission program of the European Union and so on. So that'll be interesting. I hope he does. I hope he succeeds in doing that. And then we've got the very likely issue in the upcoming presidential election in the United States, where Donald Trump gets up, and I hope this time they've got the savvy and the understanding and the foreknowledge to take all and every action necessary to preempt the deep state's efforts at frustrating his policies and programs, and so they're always one step ahead. Because last time they always wanted 2 steps behind the deep state efforts to frustrate them. So they really need to. And by the way, President Trump, I am available to assist. Tassus today is available. A more committed enemy of globalization you could not find. So when we look at this, it is the seeds, because in order to push the globalization project, they've had to effectively suspend things like due legal process. They've had to have 2-tier policing, politicized policing. They've had to create a class of political prisoners. If you oppose globalization, then we'll arrest you and crush you. They've had to use the banking system to attack private citizens who've committed no crime. The media is saturated with lies upon lies upon lies, and then more lies on top of that. Rigging elections. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of what the globalists have to do and do to get the globalist project in place. A lot of people are getting pissed off by that, mass migration only being one of the things. Cost of living and all that sort of stuff. So I think the seeds for their demise are already in place. Will they try, as they sense the initiative slipping from their grasp, will they then resort to secret police, Soviet-style, North Korean-style police state methods? I think they will, but I think that'll further undermine the appeal of the globalist projects and usher in its demise. Being a Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.